You are not imagining it. The bills feel heavier this month than last month. The income that used to feel stable now feels like standing on wet ground. And somewhere underneath the daily routine, there is a question you keep almost asking. Why is this happening to me? Maybe you lost a business. Maybe you are restarting after 50, looking at the years behind you and wondering if there is enough time ahead. Maybe you did everything by the book and the numbers still refuse to cooperate. That feeling is real, the confusion is real, and you deserve something better than a motivational phrase thrown at it. Here is the one thing that changes everything. This is not a punishment, it is a preparation. Napoleon Hill spent more than 20 years inside the minds of the wealthiest and most resilient people in American history. What he found was not a secret formula locked away for the privileged. It was a law, consistent, impersonal, and available to anyone willing to understand it. And that law says this: every great fortune in history was conceived inside a crisis. Stay with this. By the end of this video, you will see your economic winter differently, not as a wall, as a door. Most people make the same mistake when financial collapse arrives. They treat it as a verdict. They look at the numbers, the failed deal, the dried up income, and their mind immediately does what frightened minds do. It assigns meaning. And the meaning it assigns is almost always the most damaging one available. I am being punished. I did something wrong. I am not enough. This conclusion feels logical in the moment. It is not. It is the mechanism that locks the crisis in place. Napoleon Hill identified this pattern early in his research and named it one of the primary reasons most people never build lasting wealth. He observed that the majority of people who fail do not fail because they lacked intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they interpret temporary defeat as permanent judgment. That interpretation stops action. Stopped action stops income, and the cycle feeds itself. There is a distinction worth examining carefully here. Punishment is backward-looking. It exists to assign blame, to settle a score, to mark a person as deficient. Preparation operates on an entirely different logic. Preparation removes what is fragile so that what is durable can bear real weight. The process is painful, sometimes severely so, but the direction is always forward, always toward capacity. Hill called this the theology of wealth. Not a religious system, but a recognition that the principles governing material abundance have a spiritual architecture beneath them. The outer world of money and property is always, without exception, downstream from the inner world of thought, belief, and expectation. Change the inner architecture, and the outer world has no choice but to follow. Leave it unchanged, and no external strategy, no matter how sophisticated, will hold. This is where most financial advice fails people. It addresses the outer problem while the inner structure remains broken. Hill went to the source. He wrote that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But that sentence only becomes useful when you understand what he meant by believe. He did not mean wishful hoping. He meant a deep, habitual, emotionally charged conviction that has been deliberately constructed and consistently maintained against the pressure of contrary evidence. Building that kind of belief during financial difficulty is the test. Not the account balance, not the market conditions. The test is always the belief. Understand what the economic winter actually is. Napoleon Hill introduced the mastermind as one of the central pillars of his philosophy. A coordinated alliance of minds working in harmony toward a shared, definite purpose. But Hill understood the mastermind as more than a business strategy. At its deepest level, it pointed to a field of intelligence larger than any individual mind, what Hill consistently called infinite intelligence. An organizing force that responds to focused, emotionally charged, and purposeful thought. Within this framework, the economic winter is not an accident. It is an audit. Infinite intelligence, Hill argued, does not hand the next level of provision to someone who has not yet demonstrated the mental and spiritual capacity to hold it. The winter strips away the noise. It removes the comfortable habits, the shallow plans, the convenient assumptions. What remains after that removal reveals the actual foundation, and if the foundation is solid, the winter becomes the condition under which something real gets built. Hill wrote that before success comes in any person's life, that person is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat arrives, the easiest thing to do is quit. That is exactly what the majority of people do, and that, he said plainly, is why the majority of people never accumulate lasting wealth. Now look at Henry Ford. Before he built the company that mechanized an entire civilization, Ford was bankrupt, not once but twice. The first Ford company dissolved, the second followed it. By conventional measurement, twice failed. By Hill's framework, twice tested. Ford never reclassified the defeats as verdicts. He filed them as data and returned to the work with sharper tools and a clearer purpose. The Ford Motor Company that eventually emerged was not built despite the failures. It was built because of what the failures burned away. Edison's story carries a different weight, but the same law. In 1914, a fire destroyed his laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey. 20 years of records, irreplaceable prototypes, gone inside a single night. Edison was 67 years old. His son found him watching the fire, calm, almost serene. Edison said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." Hill pointed to that moment as one of the clearest demonstrations of the definite major purpose under maximum pressure. Edison did not collapse because his purpose was not stored in the building. It lived in his mind. And the mind, Hill consistently argued, is the one possession that no external event can confiscate unless the owner surrenders it voluntarily. Your economic winter is running the same test Ford and Edison faced. It is asking whether your purpose is larger than your current circumstances. If it is, you will move through this season and emerge on the other side with something the comfortable years could never have produced in you. If it is not, if the purpose is vague, conditional, or emotionally thin, infinite intelligence will keep sending the lesson until the depth is there. Napoleon Hill did not teach people to avoid risk. That point is worth sitting with longer than most people do. He taught people to manage risk without fear, and that distinction separates the person who builds wealth from the person who endlessly prepares to build wealth without ever beginning. Fear does not protect you from bad decisions. Fear produces them. It contracts the mind at precisely the moment when expansion is required. Hill was deeply shaped by Stoic thinking, even when he did not explicitly name it. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius in particular, held that the only domain truly within human control is the quality of one's own response to events. The market turns, the contract falls apart, the investment underperforms. None of those events are within your control. What you do with the next 60 seconds of thinking after each one of them, that is entirely yours. Hill built an entire philosophy on the same premise and gave it practical tools. The first tool is the definite major purpose. This is not a vision board. It is not a motivational statement. It is a precise, written, emotionally charged declaration of your central financial and life objective, attached to a specific plan and a specific deadline. Its function during an economic winter is mechanical. It gives the mind a fixed point to return to when external conditions are pulling it in every direction. Without it, the mind drifts and makes reactive decisions. With it, the mind holds position and evaluates each difficulty against a stable reference point. The second tool is what Hill called burning desire. And here, the distinction from desperation matters enormously. Desperation is desire corrupted by fear. It produces panic selling, impulsive decisions, and the kind of frantic energy that repels rather than attracts the alliances and resources needed for recovery. Burning desire is different in its quality. It is sustained, directional, and calm at its core. It is the difference between a wildfire and a forge. One consumes randomly, the other shapes metal. The third tool is specialized knowledge. Hill was uncompromising here. He observed that general knowledge, however broad, has almost no value in the direct accumulation of wealth. The person who survives an economic winter and comes out on the other side with more than they entered with is the person who identified the specific knowledge that the current moment demands, and then acquired it, applied it, and made it indispensable. These three tools working together do something important. They do not eliminate risk, they transform the relationship with risk. Risk stops being a threat to be avoided and becomes information to be processed. And information, properly processed by a disciplined mind, anchored to a definite major purpose, always points toward the next correct action, even when that action is simply to hold position and wait for the season to turn. The Stoics called this the reserve clause. Act with full force and full intention, but hold internally the recognition that outcomes belong to something larger than individual effort. Hill called that something infinite intelligence. The name matters less than the posture of a mind that is fully engaged and fully unafraid at the same time. That posture is available to you right now, not when the situation improves, now. Andrew Carnegie told Napoleon Hill something that most people who read Think and Grow Rich still overlook. Carnegie did not say the key was ambition, or industry, or even intelligence, though he respected all three. He said that the person who acquires the ability to take full possession of their own mind may take possession of everything else to which they are justly entitled. He said it directly. He meant it literally. Carnegie had watched enough men rise and fall across enough decades to know that the variable separating them was almost never external. Carnegie also understood something about generational wealth that modern financial culture tends to obscure. He did not build a fortune. He built a philosophy and the fortune grew out of it. The steel was the byproduct. The mental architecture was the product. And he knew that mental architecture, unlike steel, could be transmitted forward to children, to heirs, to communities, to anyone willing to receive it. Money without that architecture evaporates inside 3 generations. Architecture without money can rebuild the money inside one. This is what Hill called the legacy mindset, the conscious, deliberate decision to build not for your own immediate comfort, but for the people who will carry your name and your principles forward. That decision changes something fundamental in how you relate to adversity. The person building only for themselves has a cost-benefit calculation running underneath every difficult moment. Is the pain worth the reward? When the pain gets high enough, the answer can become no. The person building a legacy has a different calculation running entirely. The legacy makes the pain meaningful in a way that personal comfort never can. Earl Nightingale studied Hill's work longer and more rigorously than perhaps any figure of the 20th century and arrived at a conclusion that should be uncomfortable for anyone who believes their financial situation is primarily determined by economic conditions. Nightingale said plainly, "We become what we think about most of the time, not what we wish for. Not what we work toward occasionally, what we think about with consistency and emotional intensity." Sit with that for a moment before moving forward. If the dominant mental conversation running in your mind right now is "I always struggle," or "I'm too old to restart," or "I missed my window," understand what Hill and Nightingale are both telling you. You are not describing your reality, you are constructing it. The description feels accurate because the construction has been running long enough to produce visible results, but the results are downstream from the thinking, not the other way around. The practical move here is specific. Write out the story you currently tell about your financial situation, not the polished version, the raw one, the one you tell yourself at 2 in the morning when no one is listening. Read it. Then ask one question. Is this the definite major purpose of a person building a legacy? If the answer is no, you have found the first thing to change, not the bank account, the story. Infinite intelligence does not respond to what you want. Hill was emphatic about this. It responds to what you habitually feel and believe with emotional intensity. The universal substance that underlies all material reality is not moved by need. It is moved by organized, faith-charged, purposeful thought directed toward a specific end. That is the mechanism. It does not matter what season you are in. The mechanism works the same in winter as in summer. The question is only whether you are operating it or letting it operate against you. Let everything said in this video land here. The economic winter you are living through is not random, and it is not vindictive. Every law Hill identified across 20 years of research points in one direction. The difficulty arrived because something in you is being built that could not be built any other way. Ford needed 2 bankruptcies before he was the man who could sustain the Ford Motor Company through a century. Edison needed the fire before he could demonstrate to himself and to history that his purpose was indestructible. Carnegie needed the discipline of his own poverty before he could manage the responsibilities of his own abundance. You are inside the same sequence. The names are different. The principle is identical. Hill wrote that every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. That sentence has been quoted so many times it has almost lost its force. So hear it this way instead. The benefit does not arrive despite the adversity. It arrives through it, carried inside it, dependent on it. Remove the difficulty and you remove the seed. The seed and the adversity are the same thing seen from different angles. One from fear, one from faith. The choice of angle is yours. Your definite major purpose is your anchor right now. If you have not written it, write it before the weekends. If you have written it but stopped reading it, read it tonight. If it no longer reflects what you are actually building, rewrite it. Make it specific, make it dated. Make it larger than your current circumstances, because the purpose has to be larger than the problem, or the problem wins by default. Build your mastermind deliberately. The people in your immediate circle are either accelerating your recovery or slowing it. Not through bad intention, through the quality of their habitual thinking. You need people whose faith in the principles is at least equal to yours. If those people do not currently exist in your physical environment, find them in the literature, in the recorded voices, in the communities built around these ideas. The alliance does not have to be physical to be functional. And then act, not from the emotion of desperation, from the calm certainty that the universal substance responds to organized thought the way soil responds to a planted seed. Without drama, without announcement, without exception. In due season. If this conversation reached you today, something brought you here for a reason. Subscribe to the Napoleon Hill Wealth Code channel. Every week, we go deeper into the principles that shape the greatest financial minds in history and translate them into tools that work in real life, in real seasons, starting now. Ring the bell. Join the community. You are among people who have decided that a temporary winter does not get to become a permanent condition. Napoleon Hill left us with the sentence that closes this chapter most honestly. He said, "The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis through which they are introduced to their other selves. Your other self is being introduced right now. Meet it."